Folks, okay, we're closer than we've ever been to bolting the Kenne Bell onto my 92 coupe. Thank God. I'm going to tell you a little bit of the saga as to how this is all unfolded and why this has taken so bloody long. I'm also going to take you along for the final ride because I've got a couple finishing touches to make here. So take you along for the final ride of getting this thing ready to be bolted onto my car. Okay, here goes the story. So how this whole debacle started was I wanted to return this blower back to its original format with a bypass valve that ultimately links the outlet to the inlet. So I had one of my buddies weld up a bit of a kind of mount for this bypass valve initially, to which he welded it to the piece that had been welded to the blower that ultimately fixed the hole that was in there because it had been intercooled. Anyway, this was like re-injuring the same injury over and over and over again. And the material that was used was thin and the welding was just a little off. So long story short, I decided to cut it all out of there and start fresh. The other side of this was the elbow that ultimately mounts here to the inlet side. My first buddy that welded me up this elbow, it was just a complete disaster and wasn't going to work. It looked like my kids had built it. So the whole thing has been revisited. I now have this new plate that's welded in place. All of the old welding and old thin material is removed. And we're ultimately ready to, well, first and foremost, paint it and finally clean it up for the 8th time now, or whatever the hell it's been, and bolt our bypass and our elbow on and make this thing a completed unit. Now, through all this, if some of you have caught my other videos, I've also completely rebuilt the supercharger, and that was unexpected, but needed to happen because we had some threads that were pulled out of actually this hole and this hole. And in order to repair those threads, ultimately had to pull the blower apart and then thought, well, what the hell? While we're in here, let's get some new bearings and seals for it and go through it all. So this has turned into a rabbit hole. I don't even want to venture a guess and tell you how deep it is, but if you're interested, watch some of my previous videos and you'll see just how deep this project has become. Now, another quick little final stage of this whole ordeal is had to get some hardware in order to bolt my 90mm throttle body and the little throttle mount kind of spacer deal here. I didn't have any of that hardware, so I've been down to my local bolt house, and these guys carry all kinds of fancy stuff, stainless gear, and these kind of anodized bolts too. Oh, right, and I also need to build a gasket. So I ultimately do not know how, say, this elbow was mounted to the inlet side of the blower. I'm assuming it was probably done with like an anaerobic sealer of some sort. And I was going to go that route, but in order for my whole setup to work kind of seamlessly, it's just everything sort of fits together on such a tight angle that I don't think I'm going to be able to have silicone anaerobic sealer in here and or get it to seal properly. So I'm going to build my own gasket, and that's what this material and the gasket punch set's for. So we got to do a little cleaning up. That's why the air grinder's out here. A lot of this paint, well, has been peeled off and or heated up and kind of mangled up because of the welding. So stand by. We're going to do some grinding and some painting, and ultimately we're going to seal this thing up for the last time. now while that's drying, we're gonna make ourselves a bit of a gasket. So I've got this gasket material, used it for various things. And now, for any that are wondering why this hose is on here still, to get this hose to fit correctly and come over and into this and sit nicely, it's like cut to fit, okay? So I'm gonna try and do everything in my power to not remove this hose because I just do not want to dick around with it any longer. I do not have the time nor the energy to do that again. So anyway, this is just kind of arts and crafts stuff. Not that I even really need to trace this out because I'm just going to use my little elbow here as my template. I'm essentially going to just cut around it with the knife. Have to get some brake clean on that. Just gonna leave this stainless because I got everything else kind of with a painted theme. So, all right, here we go. All right, no real rocket science here. Just gonna be marking out my holes with a Sharpie, and then ultimately going to punch them out with a 1/4 inch punch. And I'm just using like this kind of piece of poly rubbery deal. And give that one more little hit. We got ourselves a hole. Beauty. We just got to get our center hole now. Okay, so I've got my gasket kind of half mounted here to the inlet side of the blower, and I'm just going to come around on the back side here, and I'm going to scribe myself a bit of a template as to what kind of hole I need to drill. Now I'm just using a really small drill bit to kind of mark my hole. Oh yeah, that'll work. Okay, so the gasket is made. We're all good to go there. Now we have to get after finishing up the outlet. So we're all painted and looking good. It's time to mount our bypass valve. Okay, so first things first, we gotta get our tape off here. I masked off the area that's ultimately gonna have the bypass valve mate with the aluminum. Okay, so the program here is, I'm ultimately using these Allen head bolts. I'm gonna throw some blue thread locker on them, and I'm ultimately going to seal the bypass valve to the outlet. I got Sharpie on here too, with high temp anaerobic flange sealant. It was the sealant of choice for the rest of the blower when we sealed it all back up. So we're going to run with that in this regard as well. Okay, that's good. Throw a little blue on our threads. So I'm just holding it off of the outlet right now, just so whatever, I'm not getting sealant everywhere. Okay, we're lined up. Drop it like it's hot. Right, so we're finally ready to mate the outlet to the twin screw. And now this is a little bit of a mess around, because you have to get a lot of things lined up all at once. What seems to be simple actually isn't. And I'm actually thankful that this thing has come off for the, I don't know what this is, 4th or 5th time now, because I didn't take this into consideration initially. So when you go to bolt your throttle body on, you've got these 2 bottom holes, of which I didn't realize until just earlier today that these 2 holes are blind. So typically, you know, in a stock Foxbody, you'd run a stud in here. Well, check this out. The stud just keeps on going. So this stud actually screws in to the outlet. Where are we? Down here. So there's those 2 holes there, and there. That's where this stud screws into. And you actually, like a stock length stud won't work. You need a longer bolt. So the best that I could do today were these 6-inch bolts, which is actually a little too long. But as it turns out, these holes, you can probably maybe see through there. They go, where are we? Right through into the intake. So what I think I'm going to do is ultimately cut these off, and whatever. This is going to be a later problem, because this all happens when I go to bolt the throttle body on. So that's something you need to take into consideration when you're ultimately mounting this up. Now, the reason I say that is because you're going to be messing around with tight tolerances, especially once you drop this thing in the car. So you want to make sure that you have an easy time when you're running these bottom bolts through to bolt your throttle body on. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use these studs temporarily. I'll just run them through, thread them into the outlet, and then I've got a little bit of a point of reference prior to me bolting the outlet down to the compressor. Now, another thing that I need to, I guess, somewhat clear the air on is in my video where I ultimately put this thing together the last time and bolted the inlet and outlet to the compressor, I used RTV or right stuff, like black gasket maker, right? And there was a couple folks that reached out and said, hey, you shouldn't use RTV. You should use the same stuff that you use throughout the blower, which is this anaerobic sealer. Now, there's no information out there on these blowers, right? And or how you should take them apart or put them back together. You're on your own. So the reason that I use the right stuff is I'm ultimately bolting a fairly, non-machined surface to a machined surface. Now this tape's on here, but take my word for it, this is a smooth surface, right? So if I was bolting a very smooth machined surface to another machined surface, I would 1000% say, yep, the high temp anaerobic sealer is going to be your choice. However, because this is a bit of a rougher type surface, I think the RTV is the answer, or the right stuff, whatever. Black gasket maker, whatever your choice of that is. I like the right stuff. So that's why I use this. Now, I don't know if my outlet is a little less machined than what they would be from, OEM, because as you can see, I mean, this thing has been remanufactured a couple times because of the whole intercooling situation. So therefore, this thing could not be as true as it once was when it came off the Kenne Bell factory floor. However, this is my argument. I hope this helps explain to those folks out there that were kind of giving me heck for using RTV. I mean, this is what RTV is used for, right? A non-machined surface going to a truer machined surface. The RTV fills the gaps and ultimately gives you a seal. So I'm going to get after putting a little RTV on this guy. I'll put you guys on the stand, start lining this thing up, and we'll ultimately get her mated together for the last time. Knock on wood. Finally, we're gonna put our bypass elbow on, and now you can get a sense for why I'm gonna go with this gasket. Again, there's no information on these blowers, folks, that I've been able to find, so I don't know. I'm just kind of going by whatever I can sort of figure makes the most sense here. And in order to get this guy on here, you know, like you're banging this flange against this flange, it's just, I don't think a sealant would work here. So this is why I went with the gasket. And now these holes here too are, well, they pass all the way through into the inlet. So I was thinking thread sealant, but I also want to kind of thread locker these as well. So I think we're just going to go with blue Loctite and see how we make out. So here we go. All right, and there's going to be a little bit of a difference in bolt lengths here because, well, I'm a little over the top when it comes to things looking the way they should and whatnot. And these three holes pass through into the actual inlet. This one just passes through and kind of lives out up here. So I don't want that, whatever, a whole bunch of threads hanging out there. So, okay. I'm not very prepared here, but we're gonna throw some thread locker on these guys. And we'll start bolting it up. Goodness gracious. I don't know if these things are this tight when they come from Kenne Bell, but man, what a dicker on this is. Well, folks, it scares me to say this, but this saga is finally complete. Wow, what a rodeo this thing's been. But we didn't give up. We kept the hammer down. Granted, it took way longer than it should have, but there was a lot of moving parts, handful of people involved. I really like how this bypass valve turned out, especially considering that that's how this whole debacle started. So about the only thing that I guess would really throw you for a loop in this is this welded in plate now, right? You can tell something's going on behind there, but outside of that, we're pretty much back to OE, which does my heart some good. I think this will nicely complement everything else going on under the hood of my 92 green coupe. And yeah, I think I'm gonna enjoy this black. I don't know, I kind of like my grays and silvers and stuff, but this is nice and different. And because this thing's been through so many different iterations, the black hides a lot of the imperfections that these manifolds have in them. So black it is. All right, ladies and gents, well, massive sigh of relief. The Kenne Bell blower is finally done. I wanted to put this video out so everybody understood kind of why the content on this thing has kind of gone dry on us. It's because I had all these other moving parts going on and ultimately had to rethink that whole bypass valve situation. So anyway, all of that is now done. The next step is getting the green coupe in here, bolting this thing on. Now, tomorrow, my family and I have a road trip. We got to run down to the United States. We're picking up a couple of parcels I got sitting down there, one of which ties into this Kenne Bell. It's a whole catch can system. Going to do an install video on that. I've actually also got some new top plates for my front air struts. AirTech Engineering has sent those up to me after the video I put out. They've done some remanufacturing to those top plates and sent me a new set. So we're going to be installing those and look forward to that content coming up very soon. Also, Project Revert. We have some packages in the mail. We've actually got a real cool one coming from overseas. Stay tuned for that. Going to be some really neat interior stuff going on in this car. Also found an upper and lower intake from Everett, Washington. That is also in the mail. Had a buddy hook me up down there and he's shipping it up to me. So thanks so much for that, buddy, if you're watching. And I think that's about it. So stay tuned. Lots coming with this car. Lots coming with my green coupe. Thanks so much for watching, ladies and gents. If you think this video would help somebody, please share it along. That's why I do these videos. Try to give back to the community in any way that I can. So thanks for watching. We'll catch you on the next one. Take care. Bye for now.